Still don't have a good segue, but I'm ready.
Yeah, nothing to talk about.
Nope. What'd you think of Ast? I kind of already spoke for you doing the social media thing. I put up after that we were going to play Vast, and then when we actually did play Vast, I put up a second post about what we thought about it. And I basically said the same thing that you just told me when we weren't recording, which was that it's a super neat thing. I think it's a design that is a master's thesis on designing a game, right? Or some kind of project to be like you've taken this game design class, show me your final project. From that kind of aspect, it was brilliant. And I had fun. However, I can't recommend anyone buy it because I just don't think it was that fun, even though it was really super interesting to play through, to learn the parts, to see how they all fit together. It was just a neat production, but I didn't really feel like I would ever in a million years say, let's play that instead of Cosmic Encounter, or let's play that instead of Dune, or let's play that instead of any of these other games that require the kind of input and dedication from a group to make it work.
Yeah. Let's be specific, right? Because, what we're talking about in terms of the dedication of a group is that every single person at the table has a different rule set. Okay, at this point, we're all used to asynchronous games where everyone kind of has a little wrinkle. This is different because everyone is actually playing a different game with different things to do and different objectives, and they function on the map differently. And the entire game is different. And to the extent that you actually have your own two-sided rule sheet that tells you how to play your specific game. That's how different each thing is, and every single person has to know their own role well enough to understand how to utilize that stuff to their advantage. But what's more is that when we played the game the first time, we of course did all the prerequisite wrong stuff that you do the first time you play a game. Except that every single one of us did something uniquely wrong to our character to where it actually kind of became a game as to simply okay, who screwed up the least,
yeah,
right?
That was pretty incredible, actually. usually a game implodes with a catastrophic failure of the O-rings. And it's one moment in time, and it's one specific player not knowing one specific thing completely by accident, and playing their secret condition wrong. And you're right. All four of us were doing something critically wrong to our characters. But yeah, it was just catastrophic failure table wide.
Yeah.
And the game just imploded.
Oh yeah. But more importantly is that when we got to the end and we had ironed out the wrinkles and everything, and we were talking about, jokingly trying to figure out who had made the bigger goof, what we realized is that all of the roles are so interlinked that the checks in the game are each player being not only knowing how to play their role, but being able and having the assets and the resources, which is how we were kind of messing ourselves up, is because we were losing resources because of our goofs, right, to leverage and holding the other player, specifically the one player that they're sort of diametrically opposed to, in check. And that's what is kind of being said here is that not only does everyone have to know the rules, that to be able to play their particular role well enough to make the game function, period, there you go. But you have to be able to understand the thing that you're opposed to well enough to be able to leverage your list of actions to inhibit them in order to keep the game going. And then to a less degree, you have to understand the other roles, because there's some tangential things you can do to kind of keep them in check as well. And you have to be able to leverage all that. And we played through a game, goofed it up and everything, but then we had a conversation that lasted about the length of a normal game probably would take. That was us figuring out how to play the characters. Right. And then we went back in with a second game and we did it right. So we effectively played 3 games. Even though we only logged 2 of them, right? But we put the time assets into playing 3. And it was on that third game that we went, wow, this is really cool and clever and tightly designed, and everyone should experience it. However, we burned an entire night on it and played it multiple times, and we're all sort of thinking really hard trying to get to that point of enjoying the fun. And that's a lot of investment for a lot of people. And we were all coming into it sort of, you know, helping each other and all with lots of experience and that kind of stuff. And that's just that's a lot to ask people to do in order to get to the fun.
It is. And we're pretty into the heavier, harder stuff. You know, we like, I mean, any of the midweight stuff up we're good with, you know, but we're not people who are chased away by the heavy ones or the ones where you have to kind of think outside the box. You know, that as a group, I think that intrigues us anyway. Mm-hmm. Seeing something new or something really wacky. But I just thought it was telling as a kind of a review of it, that the person that brought the game to us and said, let's play this, that's kind of, I don't want to the guy that owns the game that we said, hey, you should bring that over and play that with us, because I mean, it was on me, like all of these, you know, like we talked about Titan, like all this stuff that's, here's misery in a box, you're gonna hate it, let's play. That's all me. That is all me. So I don't want to put that on anyone. So the gentleman that owns the game, you know, I told him that we were all super interested in seeing how this thing worked. Bring it over. I really want to play this. Let's see how this thing works. And he brought it over and said, I've played this once and we hated it. And he sat it down. So, and we went into it with that, and we all played. We had that experience you just talked about. And I thought it was really weird that when we got done, he said that was much smoother and much more fun than the last time I played it. And then you had quite a few good things to say about the experience of doing it. I, you know, went on my, you know, soapbox about what a genius design it is, how incredible he got all this to work, how it balances, how this and that. The fourth member of our group said, that was fun, that was cool, mine was straightforward, I'd like to try some of these other ones some point. That was fun. And after we had all went around and said that it was either like, it was interesting, cool, fun, and good, we kind of closed the night with, so you should totally sell this. Like, none of us wanted to play it ever again. You know, and I think that's a hard thing to pull off, you know. I don't get those rattle reviews moments very often, but I mean, that was one. It was weird.
Well, some of that was definitely all of us. Well, in my part, it was the combination of, I always want to be really polite when it's someone else's game that they've invested in and that they bring over and put on the table. I mean, even with the disclaimer that he was like, yeah, we didn't enjoy it. Like, I still want to be polite, right? Because yeah,
they're expensive. I mean, you don't want to be
expensive.
Like, wow, dude, you totally wasted your money on this. Good job, bro.
Yeah, and I'm getting the benefit of that, so I don't want to grind someone down, you know.
Yeah.
And because some people can take it personally if you don't like a game that they own, even if they don't like it too.
A lot of people take it personally, but that's a total different podcast.
Yeah, put that on a sticky note. We need to come back to that one. Anyway,
we'll throw that up.
But so again, you know, me being me and wanting to be polite, that was part of it. But the other thing was, all of us, when we're making our comments, we're coming at it from a certain context. And the context of me making those positive comments was that I expected to not like the game at all. Because games that are fragile in the specific way that this game is fragile, and I was expecting it to be fragile, in that all the players have to sort of know what's going on and be able to hold each other in tension. Those games can be very unfun if there's not sort of a very even-keeled dynamic at the table, you know? And This is something that I tend to be pretty sensitive to, because, you know, when I sit down at a table, as I actually said that night, I'm very interested in everyone at the table having a good time. I take that part of the social contract of gaming pretty seriously, and I, first and foremost, I want the host to have a good time, because as a guest, that's my responsibility, is the host should have a good time, and I don't want to bring them down. And then, you know, as a corollary to that, the other people need to have a good time as well, and I take that really seriously. So I pay close attention to ways in which I am bringing the game down, and specifically in Euro style games where balance is an issue and everyone has to be sort of mathing things out on a similar level. That's when I get a little bit worried. Not that I'm bad at math per se. It's just I'm not a human computer. like some of you guys are. And so and this is me being totally honest, I was worried that I was going to wreck that game simply because I wasn't going to be able to keep up with y'all. And I thought that the game being contingent upon having 4 human computers at the table was going to mean I was going to be the linchpin that just snaps like a straw, and the game was going to be a catastrophe, and no one was going to have fun. It was going to be my fault. So when the game didn't do that, and we all had a reasonably good time, there was a bit of a personal celebration where I was like, huzzah! And, and so some of that joy kind of spilled over into my comments. And, but it's exactly like you said. After all the good comments, we step back and we look at what the game is. It was really fun. It was really interesting. But for us, it's not even that. It's just hard to it's hard to get back on the table unless you have that exact same experience again. But as we know, experiences like that, they're kind of one and done, right? I mean, you can't really go home again. And we had it. And so in order for that same thing to happen again exactly that way, I mean, we almost would have had to just keep playing it that night. Yeah,
it would definitely have to be the same group. The basic conceit of that game is that it just simply, I mean, I don't want to oversimplify. It just, you're not going to get the best experience out of that unless everyone is at exactly the same. I can't, you know what? Delete all of that. As I'm logically talking through this, like it's actually strengthening my argument by undermining it. In some ways, I don't even think that it's a. Here's the problem with it: games that scale with player experience and player level that require everyone to be the same. I think those are good and they work fine, and it's not the most impossible thing to manage. That if a bunch of novices play Puerto Rico, it's an amazing game. And if a bunch of average skill players play Puerto Rico, it's an amazing game. And if 4 or 5 world-class players play Puerto Rico, it's an amazing game. And the problem comes when the, average player plays the new player.
Yeah.
And the new player just makes the game go wonky for all the balance reasons we talked about.
Yeah.
That is an argument that's made against that game, and I understand it, and it's a valid argument. But I don't think the game itself is ruined because of it. It just means you got to work a little harder to make that happen. The problem where I think Vast doesn't fit into that category is that 4 new players playing that will not have a good time
until game 3, really, right?
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, 4 new players playing Puerto Rico will all make mistakes, and the game will still work, and they'll still have fun. I mean, assuming they like dry Euros like Puerto Rico. But, the game itself is going to work if all 4 players are doing the wrong things at the wrong time. The game still functions, and you still get the whole game, and it still feels satisfying at the end because you don't know why you don't know where things were supposed to be, and you don't know why they didn't get there. So the game was still fun, right? Vast. If 4 people that don't know what they're doing sit down to that and they all do everything wrong, the game breaks. Like it doesn't function. So you don't actually get the narrative. You don't get the fun out of that game at all. So you have to go into it doing something unfun for a couple games to get to something that is more fun. However, even with that, I didn't think it was that fun. You know what I mean? Again, I looked at it like performance art. The thing, basically what I said about the Friedman Fries's 504 thing, the same idea.
Yeah.
It was an amazing, interesting experiment project to see what would happen if you did that. What'll happen if I make 10 different games using this mechanic and 10 different games making this mechanic and 10 different games with a third mechanic. And then we just shuffle those 30 mechanics together to make 504 different games. Yeah. Like, that is crazy, right? That should never work. And what's been proven as it's come out is that it works. It's just not any fun. So does that mean that the whole project, the whole experiment was a failure? And I don't think it does at all, but no. What it does mean, though, is that this isn't the type of game that you want on your shelf to play and be fulfilled by. This is a thing you put on your shelf to talk about with other people that are just into talking about it. It's for intellectual discussions about games. It's for studying game design. You know, it's basically just kind of one of those things that's going to go down in gaming history as kind of an interesting little tidbit that doesn't have any practical use, but it's cool someone did it.
Yeah. I'll step back a little bit and say that I haven't played 504, so I can't speak to that. But at least in terms of Vast, it was fun. I mean, it was fun, but the fact that it was fun is almost why I kind of come down on it a little bit harder, is because with 504, I fully expect those games to not be smash hits. I just expect them to function. And for the fact that they function, that to be what's interesting. And with Vast, that was kind of where I was headed, was that I'll just be amazed that this thing functions. And not only did it function, but it was fun. I mean, we all enjoyed playing our roles, and I mean, the finish was incredibly tight. I mean, we thought it was, you know, the game was in the bag several turns from the end, and then we get to the end, and we kind of had a surprise winner. And I mean, that was a hoot. I mean, that was really cool.
And a near loss to the cave, which no one saw coming.
Exactly. That almost works against it, because it was so much fun that now that's the expectation. Obviously, the game can do it. However, the game can only do it with seasoned players that know what they're doing, have played the game, understand the mechanics. It's fresh on their mind, you know, and the list of qualifiers becomes so long that while it was great, and I would of course want anyone to have as much fun as we had playing it, if I was a betting man, I would say that it probably wouldn't happen, and that more often than not, people would have a game that functioned and then went, oh cool, it functioned, but it wouldn't be as interesting and phenomenally surprising in the particular ways that it was for us really ever again. I mean, too many things had to come up, you know, sixes for that to happen.
Well, let me ask you this though. Yeah. Do you think that your role, which in this case was the dragon, do you think maybe that role was more fun than everyone else's role? Because I didn't get that, like, man, that was fun vibe from that at all. But if you look at my role was just to pull 3 cave tiles off the stack and see which one, you know, either hurt or helped either player that I was trying to at the time. Because the cave's primary function is to kind of keep the dragon and the knight separated, you know, so they don't win too fast. And my call on that was to draw 3 tiles, and set them upside down on the board. I don't even get to trigger them. I just have to set them on the board and hope you guys go that way. Yeah. You know, and that was the extent of it. I had those little, spells to cast. But let's not kid ourselves. Those spells were largely draw and place another tile. Mm-hmm. You know,
it was more of the same.
Yeah. So that's all I did. And that wasn't terribly fun, except for a couple little moments in there, you know. And I'll go ahead and speak for the guy who was playing the knight. You know, I don't know how much fun he had. I presume a little more fun because he was doing the exploring. Mm-hmm. Like he was deciding which tile to step in. So there's a little bit of excitement that's generated there, but I don't think his mechanics were particularly engaging for that character. You know, it was basically you have 2 steps and 2 encounters. Which 2 tiles do you want to flip over? And that was his turn. The 2 monsters in play, you know, I thought those were both a lot more interesting. You know, with your dragon, I mean, your dragon thing was cool, like having a fistful of cards and figuring out the best way to utilize those 5 or 6 cards, like what combination to lay them down in to trigger a menu of powers. That looked pretty fun. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe your role was the fun one and the other ones work but are really dry. Because I mean, just to clarify, like the four roles, I mean, not only are you playing a asymmetric game, but you are playing a mechanically different game, like almost a genre of game in each role, right?
Yeah.
Like the knight is doing nothing but flipping tiles over. The cave is playing Carcassonne. The cave is just laying down tiles in a way that's going to essentially score them the most points. Basically limit the points of others and score the most for themselves, being that they're trying to set up for the end game.
Mm-hmm.
And the dragon is almost, it's not a deck builder, but it's like a hand management. It feels like the deck builder without the deck building part, like you're playing a pre-made Magic deck or something. But you're doing that, drawing cards, playing them down in certain combinations to trigger certain things. I mean, it was super combolistic, which is why I think it looked really fun.
Yeah.
And then the Goblin player is doing this weird resource management thing that I'm still not tracking on 100%. But it kind of felt like just flipping up a card and picking whether to make, you have 3 tribes and making one of them +2 levels, one of them +1 level, and then deciding where on the map to store them. Not only was it bizarre, but it just didn't look fun. Like I did not see fun in that. It was try to draw a card and make a stack of 6 tokens so that you can count down to have 4 tokens left so that you can do a damage to the knight who can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like it was try to get to 6 with your resources. Starting with 2 resources, try to get to 6 resources, and then you'll maybe do a point of damage if you're lucky. It was bizarre and confusing to look at across the table, but not a lick of it looked fun to me. That looked like the worst roll in the game. It looked worse than the cave roll as far as being engaging and fun.
I don't want to risk analyzing this game to a point that would be deserving of an 18xx or something like that, when this is a game that isn't going to find its market in people that care about games as much as we're about to analyze it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But some of that I think just comes down to, when you're trying to make 4 separate games, and each game needs to be different mechanically to have a unique feel and a unique flavor, what ends up happening is that if you were to have the same person sit down and play all 4 of those games, that person would find one role more entertaining than another one because of the particular game that they find more interesting, the particular mechanics they find more engaging, the amount of random information they want to deal with, the amount of player interaction they want to deal with, the amount of upset that they're willing to handle without flipping the table. I mean, all of those things.
Right.
While we're all very different and we all play very different games, we all mostly play Euro games and we think that way. And so maybe we would all kind of tend toward the same type of game that has a little bit more of the same balance. Now, with that said, I don't think that the 4 games being played at the table are so incredibly unique that sort of way to explain it is just a perfect metaphor, right? Because they're all fairly similar. I mean, ultimately they're all resource management. It's just a question of how you use those resources and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I with that kind of being the view, I certainly could understand how someone can make a claim that the dragon's more entertaining, because in your case is the cave, your whole game is holding us other players in stasis. And so you have a limited amount that you are being asked to do as the cave, because your job is to be monitoring the other players at the table to a level that you can actually thwart them.
Yeah, it's kind of like being a referee almost. Like laying out the play area, what's out of bounds, what's inbounds, that sort of thing.
And to that end, the game doesn't then ask you to do a lot, because in terms of on your turn, it doesn't give you a lot of options, because on your not turn or on the other player's turn, you're being asked to monitor everything they do. And so the Caves game is incredibly simple mechanically speaking, because it is complex in terms of the information you're being asked to process. So I can firmly see how someone might find that unenjoyable. But with that said, like, one of my complaints about the dragon...
And again, I want to interject, though. The weird part is, part of this whole weirdness of it is I didn't not enjoy it. It wasn't fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just felt like, it felt like refereeing another game.
Mm-hmm.
And that is enjoyable, and that is a cool thing to do sometimes. And honestly, as the group's primary game explainer, that's usually what I do anyway.
Exactly. So it was just more. It was more of the same kind of work that you normally do.
Right. But so maybe that's why it didn't strike me as being overtly fun. But by extension, I tend to still have fun. Like, I teach you guys to play Hyperborea, and then while we're playing Hyperborea, I'm having a ton of fun, right? or any of a legion of other games where I have to play referee, I still get done and think, man, that was super fun. And we got done with this, and no part of my brain is going, man, that was super fun.
Well, because what the game was asking you to do was be the referee. It wasn't asking you necessarily to play a game while you were being the referee.
Right.
You know? So there was there was less of a reward for the work that you were doing. Whereas, like, you know, the dragon, my turn was really fun because, as you said, I would draw a fistful of cards and then be able to sort of put them together to make combos to do things on the board. So it was very opportunistic and finding ways to kind of achieve my goals and manipulate my board, manipulate the main board to my advantage. And that was a fun little puzzle. And it was limited enough that it was pretty simple, but it was broad enough in terms of a menu of things that I could do that I never really felt completely thwarted. I had to kind of figure it out in terms of what I could do with my hand of cards, and that was fun. The complaint that I had with the dragon, I'm not sure if I mentioned this or not, is that there's no point to pay attention to what's going on when it's not your turn.
Yeah, I can see that.
The downtime while I was waiting for it to come back around to me was just boring. And whereas for you as the cave, it probably wasn't, because you were having to watch everybody, and maybe the other characters function in a similar way, but at least as the dragon, I didn't have to really care about anyone, because the only thing that mattered, at least to me, was the board state when it was my turn. It was just a question of, is there a treasure I can get to with this hand of cards? Is there a goblin I can eat with this hand of cards? That was kind of one of my big complaints. But again, that's because I'm playing a fundamentally different game than you are. So yeah, I firmly believe that there's a really good chance that everyone might kind of zero in on one particular role that they are fascinated with. And furthermore, because a lot of us gamers sort of tend to think the same, just as an entry vector into the hobbies in general, it wouldn't surprise me if, a lot of the heavier Euro folks tend to zero in on the same one as well. And maybe that would be the dragon. I don't know. But it's that combination of how much random information, how many ways can you solve the puzzle, and how many resources are you essentially being asked to juggle. And yeah, so it would be a tall order to make all four of those to be entertaining to the same crowd. And that also is why I'm not sure that it would be as incredibly fun for every other person who gets a group together to play it as it necessarily was for us. And again, I'm saying incredibly fun, just referencing the fun we had, not the fun we've had relative to all the other games we've ever played. And that's where I kind of, threw in my comment about, I don't really know if this is one that I would purchase and take to game days, but I don't know. It's a funny question. And one of the things that made me think about, to take the topic a little bit elsewhere, is there are a lot of games that I have set people down to play, and I've given them the disclaimer, I guess, of saying, you're not going to enjoy this the first time we play it. You may not enjoy it the second time we play it, but the third time we play it, you're going to go, wow, this is a great game. I mean, Race for the Galaxy is one of those. The first time you sit down and play that game, you just go, listen, you're not going to enjoy this game, and if you do, it actually means you're playing it wrong, which means you won't enjoy the second one. So just understand you have to not enjoy one of these games in order to enjoy it later. But it's worth it. It's great. But I don't feel guilty doing that. Like, for some reason, I don't feel like that's a dicey proposition. And I think it's because maybe the game is, well, I think it's a couple things, actually. One, the game is so solid. It has such a proven track record with other gamers. But two, you can just feel how tight that game is. It's not nearly as fragile as I think something like Vast is, because Race isn't, I mean, it is contingent upon the players being of roughly equal skill in order to be able to compete at a high level. However, the game's not just going to go completely off the rails.
No, that gets back into that Puerto Rico thing I was talking about, right? Where the game can suffer if the players aren't reacting somewhat predictably. Yeah. Because a lot of the game it revolves around intuiting what your opponents are going to do, because it's in a sense a programming game, right? Your secret role selection kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you kind of want to know what everyone else at the table is probably going to do, so you can decide what you should probably do to maximize all of that. And if you do anything counter to what should be done, there's a tactical reason you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, Race for the Galaxy, which by, it's no coincidence, right, that San Juan was the card game version of Puerto Rico, and then Race for the Galaxy is the advanced version of San Juan. These games all have, they all have that shared heritage. So it's, not surprisingly, they also carry the same baggage and have the same strengths and have the same weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same deal though, right? Like I said, you play suboptimally, and if everyone's playing suboptimally, the game still functions and it's still fun and it still works through to completion, and it feels like you did something and you probably learned something, and the next time you play, it'll be better and better and better and better, which is, as you were saying. And I think Vast does that. It has that same curve, but the disconnect is it's harder to get to that third, fourth, fifth game, because that first game, when everybody behaves the wrong way, the game is fragile, because what happens when everybody does things wrong is one of the players wins almost instantaneously, because there's nothing holding them in check.
Yeah.
The game is set up to one player is actively opposing you and the other two are kind of tangentially opposing you and just kind of sticking an elbow in you, at opportune times, to slow you down. And because you are just kind of, those elbows are necessary, but they're not obvious, and because of that, one player runs away with the game when no one knows what they're doing. And worse, it's even probably a different player every time that runs away with it, meaning it's harder to learn what you did wrong.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, but because there is enough random information that sometimes the game can throw a bone to someone early enough that they can just sort of take off, I would assume.
Right.
But I'll throw a note in here too, right? I mean, about, the shared lineage of the games that we were referencing sort of as a opposition to this, right? Puerto Rico, San Juan Race and all that kind of stuff, is that one of the criticisms that Euro games get is the whole multiplayer solitaire trope. And the funny thing is that oh man, I'm going to get punched for this, but I think a lot of times what makes fragile games fragile.
I'll work the bag before you come over for the
Please do.
I'll be ready.
Is that fragility comes from it being player dependent. And I'm trying to think about other games that are super, super, super player dependent, and without delaying 5 minutes to go through the games list to figure it out.
Oh, that's easy. Let's go Dune. Let's go Archipelago.
Even Tammany Hall, honestly.
Tammany Hall, for sure. What else is
there?
Cosmic Encounter?
Any of the coin games?
The coin games, absolutely. That entire series is built on that. Actually, that's probably the point. If you if you want to play I'm serious. If you want to play Vast, the good game, then go buy Cuba Libre.
Yeah.
Because that's what, that is essentially doing the exact same thing, but in a way that I think is much more engaging and much more interesting. And I don't want to say the levers are obvious, because they're not. That learning curve is huge too. As far as, ripple effects of actions.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as, one side kind of policing another side, or I should say one side being an active opposition to another side while at the same time policing the other two sides. That's what the coin series is absolutely built around. Not to say it too much, but again, that's a whole other podcast. But I think that's a good spot though, is, if that Vast is what you were looking for, and we're telling you right now that it's not what you're looking for, the coin games are absolutely that, and the coin games are very good.
Well, with that said, though, I mean, as we sort of entered into that discussion about coin, they do still have that same inherent fragility, that it is dependent on the player's knowledge, right? It is dependent on their ability to understand what's going on in real time and be able to bring the tools that they have to the board to mitigate, the other player's actions and that kind of stuff. And, we've played Coin Toon Player, and really enjoyed it because we were both sort of learning together and growing in our understanding of it and helping each other learn that kind of stuff. And so we held each other in traction. But if you were to sit 4 people down and play coin, it would be the same thing. It would be inherently fragile based on there being one weak link.
Yeah, and I can actually attest that it is that fragile.
Yeah.
Because I have played, I learned Andean Abyss as a actual 4-player sit down. Like we're gonna learn how to play this game and play it, and I won in less than an hour into the game. I won for that reason, because no one really knew no one knew which lever to push to have the proper outcome or the break applied to me on the other side of it. So yeah, I mean it does suffer the same problem.
Oh yeah.
But I just think I think the decision making part of it was more interesting.
Oh, it is. I mean, surely, and I think that where I'm trying to go with this is that Jeff is that is that
clearly you're wrong, John.
Oh
clearly.
Yeah, if you're going to sit down and have a 4-player game, that becomes more and more adding more players makes a game that's based on all the players being held in traction more fragile the more people you add to the table. So if we're going to play a 4-player game of coin, the number of hours collectively that has to be invested is so much greater that we're going to want a game that's as crunchy as coin to pay us back for that when we sit down to play a 4-player game. Whereas I don't think Vast necessarily could do that. But the flip to that is that if we're going to sit down and play a 4-player game with a small amount of investment, we want a little bit less to be given back to us, which I think is what standard Euros do, is they sort of pay back at that better rate at a higher player count. And this is where I brought up, this is the reason I was bringing up the whole multiplayer solitaire thing, is that while people can criticize multiplayer solitaire because they don't find it as rewarding as something like coin, where you're interacting constantly and at each other's throats the whole time, that's what makes these Euros rock solid to the point that you can say, yeah, it doesn't matter if we have 3 or 6 players, we're going to play this tonight and it's going to be a good game. Is because there's enough going on that isn't dependent on the other player that you can count on the game being good. I think that's the particular hole in the clouds we're trying to shoot through with this description of Vast, is that it's not that it's not fun. It's just that for the amount of effort you have to go to in order to get 4 people, which is the number of people that need to play this game, sitting down and play the game and get that reward, frankly, those people are going to have to be into the game to the level that you should probably just go and grab coin. Or not. I mean, maybe this game is great for people that don't want to invest as much time in a game, but they want to get a similar experience with less investment. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a whole new growing sector of folks that want that level of watching players and interacting with them, but they aren't as interested in a 5-hour game. But at least for us sitting at that table, yeah, I mean, why not just push it aside and get coin down?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a straight apples to apples conversion, because
no, it's not.
The coin is not quite as, I mean, it's super asymmetric in the scheme of gaming, or in general gaming, comparatively speaking, but it's not the same as Vast, because like we said, Vast is 4 different mechanics happening for each player individually. Whereas coin, you're kind of doing riffs on the same thing. It's just your goals are radically different. So it's not an identical thing. But I think that, man, the rules aren't as hard as a coin game, right? Like the learning curve for how to play this isn't bigger than a coin game. It's not as hard, but I think the balance, getting that to work, the player experience balance, is just as hard as coin.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. As far as what you're expecting players to do. Like, basically, you need to play this game 3 or 4 times to understand how to keep each other in balance. I think that's probably true of coin, too. You have to play 3 or 4 games to kind of learn how to.
Yeah, but a game of coin isn't over in 45 minutes. I mean,
well, I know, but it's going to take the same kind of mental effort, right?
Okay.
I mean, I'm separating. Nobody who's only interested in 45-minute games is going to play a coin game, period. Right? I mean, that's just it's the same desire to, like, we're going to play this game 4 times to get good at it before we make a judgment.
Yeah. Is
not something people tend to do. You know, it's just not a common thing for someone to go into a game and be okay with it and follow through on it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to draw that. I don't want to draw that false equivalency that coin is it's the same work as Vast, so you should just play coin, because it's not. Vast is easier, but I think as far as playing the same game 4 times in a row to even have an idea of how to keep it balanced is a lot more work. And if you find 4 people willing to do that work, I think you get more satisfaction out of coin than Vast, because, you know, there are factions in the various coin games that aren't as fun as other factions in the various coin games. But I think overall, the balance is better of fun among the factions than it was in Vast. Because, like I said, the mechanics are shared. It's the goals that are different in coin.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe what the podcast needs to be is, if you wanted to like Vast but don't, try coin, and when you realize you don't like 5-hour coin games, play Star Wars Rebellion. Everybody loves Star Wars Rebellion, including me. Star Wars Rebellion is freaking amazing. So, you know, maybe that's the moral of this story is, you know, the Between Turns review of Vast is buy Star Wars Rebellion.
Oh, jeez. The funny thing is, like, even by making that joke, though, I think that you actually gave me a way to make the exact point that I didn't know how to make earlier. And that is that, assuming I could get 4 people to sit down and play through 3 coin games, I would feel less guilty asking them to dedicate their time hedging on the result that I would expect for every single person to get out of that process, relative to getting 4 people to sit down to play Vast and having to bet on the experience that we would have after the same process. That's kind of a weird thing. I can't really exactly figure out where the line is in between why that occurs and as a causation versus just I just kind of have a feeling about it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not really sure,
yeah.
but Rebellion's the same way. I think that it would be much safer to get 4 people to sit down and play Rebellion with the same learning curve, the same amount of effort that has to go into it to understand what makes the game function to a level that you can play it and not just feel like you're at the mercy of someone who already has played the game.
Mm-hmm.
I would bet that after all of that effort to get the game and to understand it, that those people would have more fun more consistently than a group of people that went through the same effort with Vast.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I just think there's more of the theme is reflected in that than in Vast. You know, like I said, the only 2 of the 4 roles felt thematically appropriate. Like, the mechanics attached to them felt appropriate. And, you know, I think the knight adventuring through the tiles, not knowing what was in the darkness, you know, there's an argument to be made that that's fun enough. And you as the dragon essentially being dealt, like, you know, here's your energy and your weapons for the turn. How are you going to use them? That's a fun and engaging puzzle. That goblin game was none of that felt like running a goblin civilization or running a tribe. It just didn't, right? It didn't feel like being the chief of the goblins and trying to advance the goblin cause.
Mm-hmm.
No, it just didn't at all. And the cave, as much as we were excited about that aspect, like, how awesome is that? Someone plays the ground, you know? I mean, it is. It's a hilarious thing to talk about. It's an amazing kind of gimmick and an amazing shtick. But when I played it, I was like, and maybe I'm undermining my own argument here. Maybe playing the cave was actually too thematically close to being a cave, whereas I'm just going to lay down and you guys walk on me. Like that was, that was the takeaway. So maybe that's the answer. It's not that Vast doesn't capture its theme. Maybe Vast captures its theme too well. And quite frankly, Rebellion plays out like a choose your own adventure Star Wars movie every time you play it. And that's just flat out more fun than whatever auditing was happening in the Goblin Cave for the Goblin King. It's just, Star Wars was just more visceral and it felt, I felt as the Rebellion, I feel like the generals trying to coordinate opportunistic tactical strikes on the Empire while at the same time knowing that those are the only 5 X-Wings I have, and if I blow it, I'm not going to recover. There's a real stress there, right? And same with the Empire, where you're just like, that you can squash any resistance you come across. Like, it's easy. Yet there's a chance, like, you're on a timer, you're gonna lose if you don't squash everything. And it's not a trick of, how am I going to build enough strength to do this? No, you have resources pouring out of your ears. The problem is you just don't have time. And that's stress too, and those stresses feel appropriate to the theme. They make that game just come to life.
Yeah. However, I would interject though that those stresses are there even if the other player isn't top notch.
Yes.
And that is exactly why I would bet more heavily on people enjoying that game with a higher level of consistency than something like Vast, is simply because the coolness of Vast is the other player interaction, whereas these other games, they function. Like, I mean, they're so tightly designed that they function, and what the other player is doing to sort of knife you is a bit behind a player's screen, where it's not front and center, and because it's not front and center, that almost makes it a little bit more solid and a little bit less fragile, because if someone doesn't know what they're doing, well, you as the opposing player may not know that they don't know what they're doing until the very end of the game. Whereas in Vast, you can watch every single turn and pay attention and know if they're playing their character correctly or not, and then jump all over them, and I feel like that can rob you of some of that fun. So
right, like the underlying structure of the game keeps it on the rails, no matter what the players do wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas in Vast, the players are the rail. So if they go wrong, the whole thing derails and it's all over.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
I don't know, and so I'm trying really hard to just sort of find that line to say, like, yeah, it was fun. However, like, here's the specific issue that I had, and have that be a mechanical thing other than just a feel thing, right? Because I can sort of shrug and be like, meh, not my thing, but I always want to know why, so that I can communicate that in real terms. Anyway, but.
Yeah, no, I
go.
agree. It's a good game. It's well designed. It is a interesting conversation piece, but I think that's the extent of its use in a collection.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. And with that, I say congratulations to you, sir, for getting me to do a review show.
Yay!
I hope it was good for you, because it's the only one you're going to get this year.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all. I've got Duel of Ages too.
Oh.
Because we would not be doing a service to the community if we didn't do a podcast about a game that was out of print and cost like $300 to acquire.
I think we just found our niche.